in our schools, we need to, early in the program, let people know that when you graduate, most likely you're going to have to be, it's going to be a private practice that you have to promote and market. That's just how it is. And if that's not for you, then it's not for you. I mean, now if you think about being a physician also, people into private practice, they, in a way, they have to market themselves. They do. I drive along the local highways here. I see big billboards saying the best dermatologist. It's the norm in our society. In our profession, there's even less being strictly a practitioner and working for a clinic. There are some, but not as often and not as much as like in other professions. So I think that just being aware that this is part of the profession you need to be proficient at, because if you're not, you're going to be miserable.
I'm Michael Max, and this is Geological, the podcast that curates East Asian medicine and methods through the power of conversation. All businesses make a promise. It can be hidden or overt, advertised or implied, but one thing for sure, all businesses make promises, and all customers, clients, or patients expect and will judge us on what we've delivered. This is why it's so important to know what the promise is that you're making, because it's the yardstick that you'll be measured by when others ask your patients about their experience with you. Let's start with something that's easy to see, the promises of conventional medicine, which, when not delivered on, often will send patients to your door. Conventional medicine promises solutions that don't require much patient participation. There are medicines and procedures that will fix the problem, and it claims to run everything through the scientific process and infers it's backed by solid evidence. Look at any of the primetime ads for drugs, and you'll see the promises made by Big Pharma that are almost impossible to live up to. It's no wonder that so many patients feel let down. High-tech surgeries are sold as the best of science meets technology, and yet so many people that walk through our doors have either not been helped, but at times perhaps injured by these standard of care procedures. It's no wonder that they come to us with a sense of distrust. Now, let's look at what might be harder for us to see, namely the promises that we're making. Natural and holistic healthcare. Now, what does that exactly mean? Are you clear on the promise that you're making with your practice? What are you alluding to or offering that leads your potential patients to pick up the phone and call for an appointment? Whether or not you're clear about the promise you're making, your patients will have something in mind that they expect you to deliver. And it's usually not needles. No, it's something else. It's something that you might be able to conjure with needles, but your promise is not about needles. Truth is, your patients don't care about needles. What they seek has more to do with your ability to deliver a change. They're more concerned with the feeling that they're seeking, trouble that nags them that they wish would disappear, or maybe there's something that's missing, and they hope that you'll be able to make it appear. Being able to deliver on your carefully stated promise, that's generally what makes for a satisfied customer. Are you aware of the promise you offer or imply? And are you aware of the expectations of your patients? These two, they go hand in hand. It's helpful to be clear with what you offer, because success often comes from under-promising and over-delivering. Sometimes what we offer our patients is hope. Maybe they seek you out simply because you're different, and different is what they're gambling on. I've had people arrive in my treatment room because they don't trust conventional medicine, and they're hoping that you'll not only share that belief, but provide some magic as well. Or maybe they've read some research on a particular acupuncture point, and they want you to administer that. There's plenty of reasons that people add acupuncture into the mix of their healthcare. And these days, acupuncture isn't quite so strange. This was not always the case. There was a time when our medicine was weird and foreign to boot. And then There are those people who are curious about what's at the edges. Maybe it's a character trait that draws them to novelty, or they're just wired for curiosity. In this History Series conversation with Thomas Leung, we visit the New York City of the 1980s and how the challenges of changing demographics and innovations like fax machines set the stage for a little family herb store to grow into a larger enterprise that served an expanding population of practitioners as Chinese herbal medicine found its way into mainstream culture. The prescriptions, they might be ancient, but the way they're delivered, it's thoroughly modern. Let's hop into the Wayback and find out all about it. These conversations come to you through the generous support of our sponsors and members. Blue Poppy, your new one-stop shop, has speedy shipping options on everything that you need for your clinic. It's Women's Health Month at Mayway Herbs. Check out their new website for learning resources on helping women with herbal medicine. Are you a creature of habit? How about making a change that helps your patients and the planet with AccuFast needles? And later in the show, raising your fees doesn't have to be a difficult process. Jane has helpful suggestions on making it easy and effective. And finally, have you considered that having a thriving, profitable practice is one of the most healing things that you can do? Julie Bear-Don't-Walk has, and she can help you do something about it too. Do be sure to visit the sponsors page on the Qiological website to take advantage of all the special offers our terrific sponsors have for listeners of the podcast. Picture this. Your clinic is buzzing with patients, and then you realize that you're down to your last box of needles. No need for panic, because Blue Poppy, your one-stop shop for all your acupuncture needs, they ship orders received before 3 p.m. on the same day. With a quick visit to Blue Poppy's website, you can order premium needles, herbal formulas, and that special Dr. Bob's oil that your patients love. Blue Poppy understands practitioners can't keep patients waiting. That's why they strive to get you what you need when you need it. From high-quality Chinese herbs and formulations to acupuncture supplies and clinical essentials, Blue Poppy has served practitioners for nearly 40 years with products that meet the highest of standards. Discover everything Blue Poppy has to offer by visiting www.bluepoppy.com, and don't forget to subscribe to their mailing list for exclusive offers and more.
Hi folks, I'm Yvonne Lyle, president of Mayway Herbs. May is Women's Health Month, and as a women-owned and women-run business, we especially love how Chinese medicine can support wellness through every stage of a woman's life. So in this month's newsletter and podcast, we're covering topics like PMS, pregnancy, menopause, and osteoporosis. We'll share expert insights and effective treatment strategies you can put to good use in your clinic. Our Plumflower brand line includes herbal tea pills, tablets, extract granules, and organic herbs, all of which you can find on Mayway.com, and where you can also find articles, videos, and other resources to support your practice. Since 1969, Mayway has been a trusted source for high-quality herbal products. In these challenging times, please know that we remain committed to keeping our products accessible and affordable so you can take care of yourself and your patients. As always, thank you for supporting Real Chinese Medicine.
Daily habits and routines feel comforting, familiar, easy, automatic. That's the power of repetition. You've worked out the kinks and can do it with your eyes closed. But what if you shook things up? What if you ditched the old routine and tried something new? Hi, I'm John Sten. I've practiced acupuncture for over 30 years, and together with my wife Kelly, we created the world's first eco-friendly acupuncture needle. The AccuFast earth-friendly needle system cuts your packaging waste by 60 to 90%, depending upon your needle type, speeds up your needling, gives you more control, and best of all, while you're healing patients, we plant a tree for every 2 boxes your clinic uses. Thousands of acupuncturists have already made the switch. In just the last year, they've helped plant over 16,000 trees. Since we started, that number has grown to over 50,000. So break the routine. Be the change. Visit AccuFastNeedles.com. Your patients and the planet will thank you.
Thomas Leung, welcome to Qiological.
Well, thank you for having me.
I'm so happy you're here. You're in New York City,
Yeah, right in the heart of it, in Manhattan.
Manhattan. I was told that you're not supposed to say Manhattan. It's supposed to be Manhattan.
I don't really subscribe to rules, what a New Yorker is supposed to be like, or what we're supposed to say, because so many people come to New York. What makes a New Yorker is, I don't know, and then people come up with all these rules like, oh, how we talk and da, 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 and all that other stuff. But I think if you want to be a New Yorker, you're a New Yorker. So you can make up your own rules.
Yeah. It is one of the cool things about that city. And I know this is a little bit cliche almost, right? That it's such a melting pot. It's such an incredibly vibrant place with so many different kinds of people, so many languages, different colors, different sizes, cultures. It's quite an extraordinary place on the planet Earth.
No, I agree 100%. And then we also have a lot of people from other parts of the country who would come into the city and come to our city or New York City, and they would live here for 5 years, 10 years. And then they would go back to wherever they're from or another place, or maybe sometimes they settle here. And that they also contribute to the city. And, yes, there are a lot of people who melt, but there are people who come and they'll live for 5, 10 years and then they move on. They want to live their 20s or 30s
Yeah.
in the city.
Yeah.
Single life. So I love it. It's all part of the experience in New York City.
Yeah. Now you grew up there, right?
Yeah. I grew up in Manhattan. I grew up in Little Italy.
You grew up in Little Italy. Well, now isn't the, quote, Chinatown like near Little Italy in?
So strictly speaking, geographically speaking, like north of Canal Street is Little Italy, and south of Canal Street, for those who know Manhattan, is traditionally Chinatown. Chinatown has gotten bigger, so it's grown north of Canal Street. My parents, we have a business north of Canal, and we were one of the first Chinese businesses north of Canal, and everyone around us were Italian.
Oh, that's interesting. How did your folks get started? I'm curious, right? This is a history podcast here. Like, when did your family come here, and how did they, and like, why New York?
Oh, okay. We have to go back a little bit. So my family is from Qingyuan, is an area like maybe an hour and a half outside of Guangdong. They always had an herbal business, like my great-grandfather and my grandfather in China and then Hong Kong, and then, here in New York. And during the revolution in 1949, what China would call the liberation at the time.
I was going to say, which revolution? There's been a few of them.
Exactly. No, the liberation. 1949. My grandfather was part of the old government. He was a mayor of several small villages, nothing big. And he was actually marked for arrest and possibly execution. Actually, I know for execution. And someone tipped him off and he went to Hong Kong. He escaped to Hong Kong. So, the rest of the family was still in China, but over the years, then they also came to Hong Kong. So in the family, there's always this fear that they will come and get you one day, because Hong Kong, although it's a British colony at the time, the writing's on the wall that someday Hong Kong could go back. Dad's fear was realized in 1997.
Well, I mean, there was a point where that contract came to an end. Right?
Yep. So that's when my dad knew that he had to take a chance and leave Hong Kong for anywhere, and America was the place. Why he chose New York is because he has a good friend in Hong Kong who has a friend in contact in New York, and that was his landing spot.
So it was your dad who came over?
Oh, yeah. My dad came over first, just left the family there for...
How old was he when he came over?
I don't know, but I was like the late 60s, early 70s. Maybe, I want to say 71, 70.
Okay. Which is right about the time that Chinese medicine is kind of being taken up by the dominant culture here, right? This is about the time where people are starting to...
Yeah, I think so.
Your dad arrives right around that time frame.
He did, but he did not work in the Chinese medicine field when he first landed. You just don't, come to a new city and just start your own business. He had to work in a restaurant for a little bit. He worked in a garment industry for a little bit until he got settled a little bit. And then my grandfather helped him start the business.
I see. Okay, cool. So is that when you guys ended up north, or he ended up north of Canal, or
That's right.
that's it? North of Canal.
Yeah, it's south of Canal is Chinatown. I never asked him why he picked north of Canal. Maybe the rent was cheaper. I don't really know. And we were on Mott Street, 125 Mott, which is 2 blocks north of Canal, or a block and a half north of Canal Street. So we were in Little Italy, and all our neighbors were Italian. I went to school with Italian kids. No, but just, the bad stuff, obviously.
Of course.
But when I picked up, of course, I start talking like an Italian American. I tone it down for you or for the people who are listening to the podcast, but it'll come out if I speak to another Italian American. Someone who's really like your caricature, like, one of those Bobby De Niro caricatures, or his characters, let's put it that way. And I live here now in New Jersey. We have a number of Italian families, and when we have a party, it comes out.
Yeah. It's interesting when you're with different people, or even in different languages. It's almost like different aspects of personality will come out.
100%.
It's really weird. I'm much more outgoing in Chinese than I am in English.
You mean language?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. Because I'm not afraid to make mistakes, because I know I'm going to make mistakes. I know I'm going to sound like an idiot. And so I don't care about sounding like an idiot. I take a little more risk in Chinese than I do in English. It's weird.
No, that's your venture side, I guess. Coming out.
I don't worry about sounding stupid in Chinese, because it's a foregone conclusion that I will. So it just doesn't matter to me. Whereas in English, I want to sound, like I'm intelligent. I can carry on a conversation, that kind of thing. I know I'm going to sound like a goofball in Chinese, so
I hear you.
Just let it rip.
I'm sure you sound fine.
You haven't heard my Chinese. Anyway, you grew up in an herb store. What was that like?
People ask me that a lot. I tell them that it's a lot sexier than you think.
It's a lot sexier than you think?
Less sexier than you think. Oh my goodness. I remember growing up, it's like the last thing I want to ever do is to run an herbal pharmacy. I wanted to leave the business as soon as I'm able to. And a lot of it is because while other kids are playing, I'm working in the herb store. It sounds really cool now, like in school, in my class, the students are like, oh, it must be really awesome growing up in an herb store. And I admit there are definitely a lot of cool aspects to it. But when you are 10 years old, it doesn't seem that cool.
No, I wouldn't think it would. It would probably seem like, oh, I got to go to work and I got to do this and I got to do that. Just by floors to sweep and shelves to stock. And
well, it's not that part too. But it's really more of you're an immigrant family. You try to fit in, and being in a Chinese medicine herb store is like the last thing.
Not cool, man.
Not cool at all. It's not like your dad has an ice cream store or something, or a toy store. That'd be kind of cool, but
that'd be all right.
That would be all right.
Yeah. So what did you want to be? At that age, what did you want to do?
I don't know, but definitely not.
But not this. Anything but this.
Not this. It wasn't sexy at all.
It depends on if you're into herbs or not. What changed for you? What shifted?
What shifted? Like, why?
Yeah, like how'd you end up in the herb store and you seem like you're okay with it? So
growing up, being around the herb store, there's also this expectation too. It's not just the fact that I'm in the herb store. My great-grandfather was an herbalist, runs an herbal dispensary. My grandfather, my dad. So I'm the oldest son.
Oh, yeah. No pressure.
Exactly. And my grandfather was the one that kind of tutored me it's like my mentor, my herbs mentor, and always telling me this, that, and then he feels the burden of, passing it on too. And I think that's kind of add to it. And I think it's like with the burden of that and just having to work there when other kids are playing. And don't get me wrong, I do go out and I do have fun and play and like a normal kid, but I never had a job outside of the herb store, really. It's just, that's what we do. I knew that when I went to college, my dad told me that, hey, you know what? You got to study something that could be useful. We don't know if Chinese medicine could be viable in the future. So why don't you study medicine? My sister took the Western medicine path and she's a pediatrician. And then my dad's like, hey, why don't you study medicine too? Okay. I was not a great student in high school. I did okay. I went to Brooklyn Tech. I'm okay, but I wasn't disciplined, let's put it this way. So med school's out. These is like an immigrant family's dream to have a doctor, right? So the med school's out.
How about a lawyer? How about a lawyer? You could be a lawyer.
No, I think my family has aversion to a lawyer.
Oh, okay. It's not in the mix for you.
No, but my dad wanted me to study medicine. So I went to school and I studied, first it was pharmacology as a major, and then I switched to pharmacy. The funny thing is, my roommates like, hey, why are you studying pharmacology? Pharmacy pays better. And that was true. And pharmacy and pharmacology are very similar. The program's a little longer for pharmacy, but I ended up studying pharmacy in the University of Buffalo. When I graduated, I worked a few years at Walgreens, retail pharmacist, and I absolutely hated it. I love pharmacology, but I hate being a retail pharmacist. We learn so much as a pharmacist. We know so many things. We learn about the drugs. We learn about physiology, pathophysiology, pharmacokinetics. We don't get to exercise any of that. We don't get to use any of that. We end up counting pills oftentimes. Well, we're a machine counting them.
In a sense, you're just a clerk.
Unless you work in a hospital and you're a clinical pharmacist, then you get to use more of it. But at a retail pharmacist, not really, not so much. So I find it boring. There are people who love it. I won't dismiss the profession. It's not for me. Let's put it this way.
Well, exactly. Look, in this world, there's a lot of different kinds of jobs that need different kinds of aptitudes. You got people that build things. Don't ask the people that build things to maintain them. They just don't do that. There's people that are really good at maintaining things. There are people that are good at checklists. There are people that are good at dispensing medicine, right? And thank goodness there are, because we need them to do that job. But if you've got a different kind of mind that works in a different way, that kind of assembly line work is not going to cut it for you.
And it wasn't for me. So back to your question, how do I get back into Chinese medicine? This is 1994. My dad asked me hey, you know what? I know you don't like being a pharmacist, but hey, how about coming back to the business? Maybe even work in the business. We have a lot of, your mom and I, we're getting older and we need help. Now, when I heard that, I'm like, oh my goodness. I joke, but there's some parallels. It's like the mafia family telling you to come home. And as much as I did not like the idea of working in the herb store, like what I said earlier about, kids having fun, I'm working in the herb store and all that stuff.
Yeah, no, I get it, man. You got chores and it looks like a much better life outside of it.
Yeah. And you know what? It also feels like you haven't gone anywhere. Now you're coming back to the thing that what do you want to go to school for? But I know I did not want to do pharmacy. But that one positive aspect of coming back to the business, which excites me, is I knew the business could use modernization and it can improve upon it. And my parents allow me the freedom to okay, if you think you can do things better. And I knew they needed the like a young, enthusiastic enthusiasm injection into the business. And that's the time, by the way, in the 90s when NAFTA happened. The significance of NAFTA is that a lot of the businesses in Manhattan, the garment industry, went away. And that pretty much...
Okay, that's a big thing.
That's a huge thing.
Because the rag trade was huge.
So if you are in Manhattan, and this is a history podcast, and I think this would interest your listeners. If you are back in the day, if you go to Soho and you go to Nolita, these are all garment industry factories. All these lofts, these multi-million-dollar lofts. And they were filled with garment industry people, there was a garment union. Most of the Chinese immigrants, the mother would work in the garment industry as a garment factory worker. Most of them are the union, some are not. And then the dad would work as, a chef or whatever in a Chinese restaurant or some other job. But after NAFTA, the garment industry went away, and you see all of a sudden these lofts were empty, and the developers turned them into condos, whatever, in the 2000s. And a lot of the people moved out of Manhattan into the other boroughs because it was cheaper rent. And thus the beginning of all these other Chinatowns. Yeah, so NAFTA really did a big number on that.
That was a huge influence, very disruptive.
Very huge. And at the time, I knew the writing was on the wall because back in the day, Camel was very much a local mom and pop. We served the local community, like within, I don't know, Lower Manhattan, you want to say? And I knew that when people moved to Brooklyn, they moved to Queens, Elmhurst, whatever, they're not going to take the train and come out and get herbs from you. So either your business adapt or you're done.
That's the way it is with businesses, all businesses. You adapt or that's it. I mean, that's, it's a little bit brutal, but it also, it makes you go looking for opportunity.
I say this all the time. Running a business is like swimming. The moment you stop swimming, you're sinking. And that's what it is. So in the 90s, that was a big change. And we had to change the business. I had to change the business. How Camel is now and how it was. Completely different model.
And right about that time, this thing that used to be the DARPA net is now showing up as the internet, right?
I don't think it was that early yet, but I think it was maybe for the very early adapters, perhaps.
I used to work in high tech. And so I remember that in like the mid 90s, the internet was just beginning to happen. And I was working in the tech sector at that point. And so I managed to get myself like a, .com address, email address, like way before most people did. I was like, oh, that's so cool. I was so cool with that. And we were doing a lot of networking anyway in the work I was doing. And yeah, so the internet was just beginning to emerge. It wouldn't be till like 1998, 1999 when that whole boom happened for a couple years that it really hit. But yeah, like right about the time you went back to it, this other influence was happening. So what kind of changes did you think needed to be made after NAFTA? Like, what was the first thing that you noticed after, like, places are shuttered down, garment industry's gone, my usual market, they've spread out through the city to the different boroughs? What did you do next?
So one of the things that to remedy this was to do mail order. So at the time, we would tell people, okay, you know what? You don't have to come into Manhattan. We'll mail it to you. If you live in the suburbs, we'll mail it to you. I still remember UPS has this big, long book and you manually fill in like a checkbook back in the day. I'm dating myself right now. So that was the early days of UPS and it helped. And that was the first times that we actually were doing mail order. Going back to what you said earlier, that's when Chinese medicine starting to take hold in the United States. So we have practitioners looking for services, pharmacy services, dispensary services. Now, a lot of times in Chinatown, if you go into an herb store, most of the people who run the herb pharmacies, they don't want anything to do with you. They don't know if you're from the FDA, from the city, and they don't speak English, most of them. So it was, and my dad's like, there are people coming in asking for things, and, if you're here, it will work. I was like, okay. And that's when we took on a lot of non-local Chinese practitioners' businesses because we were able to communicate with them and also be able to communicate our values to them. And I say values because this is it's very important for practitioners to trust you. They have to know you and they have to, to give you an herbal prescription. They have to trust you and know you. And if you can't speak the language, that makes it harder. And also what helps is they also know that I'm a pharmacist. That was very helpful. And also another thing that I did to build that trust over the years is I employ a lot of the standards that I've learned in Western pharmacy to care for. I'll give you one example. In the old days, if a Chinese practitioner will write or a Chinese herbal doctor wrote a prescription and you notice something's wrong, you don't pick up the phone and you call the doctor and say, hey, let's just say you were the doctor, Dr. Michael. I think this might be wrong. If you did that, you're showing them up. And this is a very Chinese cultural thing, unless you have a really strong relationship with the doctor. But if you did that, basically you're not going to get that business from that. They lose face.
This episode is brought to you by Jane, the clinic management software that honestly just makes running a practice easier. Let's dive into something that's never easy, but sometimes necessary: raising your fees. It can feel awkward, right? But here's a tip that can really help. Consider offering flexibility to your patients as you introduce the change. When patients face new fees, it's natural for them to feel uncertain or concerned. That's where flexibility can really make a difference. Offering options like a phased increase, suggesting a payment plan, or even taking a moment to talk things through can help to ease the transition. These thoughtful gestures show your patients that you're listening and care about them, which strengthens the trust you've worked so hard to build. If you're looking for more ideas on how to navigate these kinds of changes, head to frontdesk.jane.app and check out the article, How to Tell Clients You're Raising Your Fees. One last thing, if you're ready to give Jane a try, you can use the code CHEOLOGICAL for a 1-month grace period on your new Jane account.
Yeah, everyone's got a little face in the game. No one likes to be called out.
No one likes to be called out. But with non-Chinese practitioners, their attitude is quite different. Now, it could be because we are, and maybe it's just because of the stereotypes, whatever, because we're Chinese, we've been doing this a while. When I call them, they're mostly receptive, non-Chinese practitioners. Like, hey, I think this might be a little bit too much, whatever, or something. What if something's wrong? Like, I don't hesitate to call them. And this stems from my experience when I was working at Walgreens. That's what we do. There's no ego. You just call the doctor and say, hey, whatever. And the doctor will say, okay, yeah, all right, fix it.
Yeah, because look, we all make mistakes. We all get busy. It's actually a service and helpful. I know for me, when I was learning Chinese medicine, I spent time in the Seattle Chinatown International District, kind of hanging out and get prescriptions filled. I try to learn a damn thing or two, right? If somebody cared enough to notice something and would mention it to me, I'd be grateful.
Of course, we'll do it in a respectful way. Like I would do it in a respectful way.
Yeah. Well, I figured I'm learning this stuff and I'm kind of an idiot because I don't know it yet. So any feedback I'd get, I actually would welcome it. But that's me as a white guy learning this stuff and, So what did you do with those guys? If you had a Chinese doctor and you look at it and you go, oh yeah, this is not right. What did you do?
This is traditionally in the old days before I started working there. And I noticed we don't fill it. We tell them to go get clarification from your practitioner, from your herbal doctor, right? So basically you have to make a stance. Like if you think it's wrong, unethical places, they'll make that decision for you, for the doctor, right? And or they would say, hey, listen, let's just say that there's a dose that's kind of too large, so we will pack it separately. You know what? When you go, next time you see a doctor, tell him, call him, the pharmacy, put it aside. If it's whatever, you can use it. But it's a delicate situation for sure. And that's an example of incorporating some Western standard. And I think the non-Chinese practitioners are very appreciative of that. And by the way, most of the modern Chinese practitioners are used to people calling them now. So I'm talking about the old days.
Well, it's funny. We're calling it, we're saying call them out, but really what you're doing is you're pointing something out.
And some other things that I also brought over was record keeping. We do not keep records in the old days, or how we run dispensaries. You come in with a prescription, you fill it, you take your prescription with you, you leave. To me, when I was working in a Western pharmacy, that doesn't happen. The prescription stays, and we document it. So I proposed that, not so much to the Chinese practitioners, but all the non-Chinese practitioners. And they're like, to them, it's like, okay, yeah, no brainer. So that works. It's just funny. We're talking about this, and I'm glad it's a history podcast because going back and see like how we did all these things, we started with faxes. For your younger here listeners, they'll be like, what's a fax machine?
What's a fax machine? There's only one profession that still uses fax machines. Medical.
That's right.
That's it.
Because it's HIPAA.
I know, it's so weird, isn't it? Like fax machine. I haven't owned a fax machine since last century. Actually, last century. I'm not kidding.
I think that's just legally lazy with the whole fax machine situation. That's a conversation another time.
Yeah, that's a different conversation. But fax machines made a difference in your business as things are decentralizing. You're shipping things out. Fax machine was like the early email for you, I suspect.
Right. So we went from fax machine, and then we went to emails, and then we went to building our own online application for people to put in their prescription. And we were one of the first, I guess probably I could say we are the first in the industry to do that.
What year was this? When did you do that?
Probably in the early 2000s.
Early 2000s.
I forgot exactly yet.
What kind of software did you use? Did you build it out of?
We build it out. So I have a childhood friend. He's a programmer with big companies. He still works with us now. He's been with us, I don't know, since 20 years. He built all our applications for us.
Custom made.
Custom. You can't buy it off the shelf because it's so complicated. Our operations is so much more complicated than other dispensaries because we do herbs, we do cooking with herbs, we do granules, we do encapsulation, we sell products. You have to put it all in one cart. Also check your doses, check your allergens. I mean, you just name it. It's there's no off-the-shelf software that can capture all that. So there's just absolutely no way. And so we had to build it in-house. And I'm proud to say that Camel had the e-script, you want to say, electronic prescription, before the mainstream Western pharmacies. And the reason is we needed it. We really, really needed it because a lot of practitioners, they don't write characters, obviously, so they had to type in the pinyin. Our herbal counter guys have to read Chinese. The computer would translate them. And you would say, well, that's very easy.
Not so easy. Not so easy. No.
It's not that easy. Not so easy.
No, because when you're typing in pinyin, it's like you got different tones, you got different characters. Yeah, no, it's tricky.
Not only that, there's many ways to call an herb. So what's taught in the school with Bensky, they standardized it. But what a lot of people don't know is that if you look underneath Bensky, there's a lot of aliases. And it's not standardized depending on what part of China you're from, right? And it's... Now, those of us who are in the business, we know all the variations already. You know, like growing up, I hear it like...
Because you're in the business.
And not only that, a little sidebar. This is interesting. I think it's very unique because we're in New York. And why do I say that? If we operate our pharmacy in Hong Kong, for example, your practitioners are all Southern practitioners, right? So you already know what herbs they use, what they call the herbs. But we're in New York. We have practitioners from all parts of China. And they call them differently. An herb may be called Bobby here, but it's Bob there and it's Robert there. So when you're running an herbal dispensary in New York, you better know all the different variations. And you learn them through the years. Now, we are from the South, so we are already familiar with the Southern. But the Northern, we weren't. So over the years, we learned Northern practitioners, Taiwanese practitioners, what they call these herbs. But now with standardization of the opinion names, that helps tremendously. And also our software, when people use it now, there's definitely clarity now. There's no, you can call it whatever you want, but the system is going to make you verify it.
And then you'll know.
You know, and there'll be no mistake. Absolutely no mistakes.
Wow, what an innovation. You know, I keep coming back to this NAFTA thing. I don't know. Sometimes I just get, I get like my teeth in something, or, I hear something like this. Something that seems like a small thing if you don't understand the impact of it. But thinking about how this so dramatically changed the landscape for your folks' business, and in turn set the stage for having the kind of business that you guys have now. It's so weird how sometimes the things that are so damn troublesome really are opportunities to make something even better. You don't even know what it's going to look like yet.
It's true. I think within every crisis, there's opportunities.
Yeah, there is, right? I mean, you see it in the Chinese, like the character. Remember hearing about this when I was, like younger person, like the word crisis means danger and opportunity, the wei ji, right? It's got both. Oh, that's kind of cool. And then I studied some Chinese, like, holy shit, it really is true. And it's a cool idea, but like, how do you keep your head about yourself when things are falling apart?
I think anyone who runs a business, you're constantly monitoring the landscape. You just have to. Sometimes you react, it works out. Sometimes you react, it doesn't work out. That's why so many businesses fail. Or I would say businesses thrive and they do well, and then they fail. There's no guarantees. Well, as we see in our lifetime, Kodak, Blockbuster, they thrive. But if they don't consistently make changes, they will fail one day, regardless.
It's so true. It's 100% true. That thing about monitoring the landscape. You could look at that as like, oh my God, like what a hassle and so much trouble. I have to constantly pay attention. But on the other side, it's like, well, I could constantly pay attention. Like what else is going on here? Which is great. I grew up in a family, my family, like my grandparents' generation and all those aunts and uncles, none of them had a job. None of them had jobs. They all had businesses. And I didn't realize this until like years later, like as an adult, that like, holy shit, no one in my family really had a job. I thought they had jobs, but actually they had businesses. And that makes you think differently. That makes you look at things differently. It turns you into a different kind of a critter in a way because you see the landscape differently.
Absolutely agree. Or being an entrepreneur is not easy, but it's rewarding.
It can be. A lot of people think, oh, entrepreneurs, they're just in it for the money. And, really entrepreneurs are in it because either they don't have a choice. The dominant culture isn't hiring people like me, right? Which is what happened to my family. Or there's just like an itch that you got to scratch. Like, man, there's a thing I just need to make it right in the world, right? That's also what drives entrepreneurs. You need money to do it. And that's helpful because then you get to manifest your vision. I want to ask you something about this because, you're an entrepreneur, you're a businessman. We're talking about some great companies that really had it for a while, but then they stopped paying attention. Sometimes I wonder, is it that you stop paying attention because you're like big and bureaucratic or, you're big, fat and prosperous so you can take your eye off the ball? Or is it sometimes that you've come up with some great solutions that were really workable and brought you the success you have, but then the landscape changes? And the very things that brought you success are now the things that are going to lead to your failure. Like, how do you stay ahead of that?
To address the first question, I have my theory about this. And actually, I read some books about the downfall of these bigger companies. And then also just my experience talking with other people who are in businesses. I think small businesses, like such as ours, like less than 50 people, where the owner is also the operator, like myself, we're more versatile. We adapt quicker. We don't have this big bureaucracy. I don't have to answer to anyone, like stakeholders, whatever you like, investors and things like that. With these bigger companies, people are protecting their jobs. So they're not going to be in these companies forever. Let's just take the case of Blockbuster and Netflix. You don't think that they know that the other model is better and it's more viable? But what happens if you suggest these things that would disrupt within the company organization? Who's going to stick their neck out, right? So there's risk. Why am I suggesting all these changes when I'm going to be out of this company in a few years? I don't have the luxury as a small business owner. I'm going to be here in the next few years, as long as I don't get run over by a bus.
And you want to continue to be here.
Yes.
You have skin in the game. You don't just have a job, you have skin in the game.
And Michael, let me tell you, forget about the big companies. That's a given, because I'll give you an example. I have, in our own profession, without calling out any individual or whatever, but I've been to schools and I teach in a school. I'm not talking about my school, but let's just say other schools. They know there's a solution at hand because we have software. We have free software that we give to schools that they can use for the dispensary. Doesn't cost them a thing. And they would not use that software. Do you know why?
Wasn't built here, maybe? I don't know.
No. It's because no one's going to take ownership of that and then stick their neck out and get everyone on board with these things. In the event that it fails, then they don't want to have to wear it. Or they're like, you know what, it's too complicated. I'm going to be out of here in a year or two. I see this all the time. When there's something clearly better, they still don't want to do it. And I see this in organization after organization after organization. This happens. As you can see in our profession, let's just talk about the academic institutions. They don't pay people a lot of money. So people come and people go. They're not going to stick their neck out just for, let's just say, oh, this is really good for our school. You got to get people on board. You got to build consensus. And if it fails, it's on you. Listen, let's not rock the boat. We're here for 2 years. I'm here for 2 years, 3 years. I'm out of here. I'm not getting paid that much.
Don't rock the boat. It's not rock the boat. Again, I used to work in the tech sector. There was this thing about, nobody ever got fired for recommending IBM. Was it the best solution? It was not the best solution. But even if it failed, well, we used IBM. So what are you going to do? We did the best, right?
And that's the crux of a lot of these bigger companies. People are always looking out for their own best interest and not necessarily the best interest of the organization.
Whereas when you're self-employed or you're running a small business, you're the boss. Your self-interest is much more aligned with the self-interest of your business.
Mm-hmm. And I would even go beyond that. I say for ourselves, for the best interest of the profession, because selfishly speaking, what is best for the profession is best for our business. If I make a lot of money doing the wrong things at the cost of the long-term viability of the profession, I'm not leaving it in a good place for perhaps my children to take over the business. Our business and the profession's best interests, they're the same. We see them as the same interests. So we do a lot of things in our company where we don't make as much money, but we want to do the right thing. We want to make sure that our businesses, that the profession is sustainable long term. We want to be stewards, like good stewards for the profession. And that's why I always preach that. I tell colleagues, students, I say, you know what? You should get into the business of Chinese medicine, because I know as practitioners, it's not a guarantee, but hopefully because you are a practitioner, you would care about the profession and not do the wrong things for the sake of making an extra dollar, an extra buck at the cost of the profession. Because nobody else cares about the profession other than us, right? Those who are in it. I think that's big.
I keep hearing people talking about, it's too bad that we're living under this late stage capitalism. Is this sort of disparaging, like, making money is not a good thing and having businesses is not a good thing, and this, this whole ecosystem of commerce that we have is innately flawed. And I'm hearing you talk about that our profession, and really any profession when you think about it, any group of people that have, some kind of skin in the game together, they're these ecosystems. Ecosystems are always looking out for themselves, first of all, right? Every critter is self-interested in itself. I suspect every ecosystem is self-interested in itself. That's kind of built in to a life form. But there's also the piece of cooperation. Like, how do we do this together so we get to keep doing this and thriving? And I think what I hear you saying here is that there's an aspect of cooperation that we have in our ethics and our commerce and how we are with each other. In looking out for ourselves, we also look out for the greater good, depending on our ethics.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, for sure. And this is why I think that the chances of a company that's owned by TCM practitioners who care about the profession are more likely to do the right thing as opposed to a business person who in the business of Chinese medicine. They don't have the responsibility to maintain the profession. You know what? If the Chinese medicine profession go down in flames, they move on to other things they can make money on.
Right. We'll go on to the next thing.
Whatever the next thing is. For us, it's, in my family, it's been 4 generations. We don't want to see it die in the 5th. We all have to take part. One of the things also that we do in the company is we do a lot of promotion of the profession wherever we can. I'll give you an example. We give a lot of free tours. And not free tours to get more businesses for our business, for our Camel. I mean, we do that also with practitioners. I mean, that's for obvious self-interest, but we also give tours for little kids, grade school, third graders, fourth grade. Yeah, we do all the time. So around April, May, we give a lot of school tours, and they would come in and we give them 20 minutes of what Chinese medicine is about. They get to touch the herbs. It costs me money to do this, to have the people, whatever, and give the tours and things like that. But it's so rewarding, and I think it's very helpful because these kids, when they grow up, they would have an understanding. I'm not saying they're converts right away, but
No, but you're giving them a touch point. You're showing them something, maybe it sparks an interest in them, or at least it's not strange and weird and unknown. It's like, oh yeah, I went on this tour when I was a kid. It's kind of normal.
so we give these tours. We rotate within the company, but I get people, employees who look like some of these kids, and they see someone who looks like them that's not Chinese explaining Chinese medicine, and it becomes more real for them, and the people who work in the company, they love doing that because it gives them a chance to promote the medicine, to help bridge some of the misunderstandings or the caricatures they see on TV and things like that.
That's so cool. I was talking with somebody recently, and he was saying that acupuncture, Chinese medicine right now in the United States, it's actually an American flavor of something that's been going on for a long, long time. And what I hear you doing is you're bringing forth this piece of the American flavor of what this stuff is. You happen to have a Chinese background, but at this point, the cat's kind of out of the bag, right? It's in the culture, and you're helping to nourish it at that sort of newer level where it's in the mainstream culture.
Yeah, and because if we don't promote it more, I mean, how many Chinese people are there in the United States? Not enough to sustain this. It has to be the rest of us needs to be, what a lot of Chinese medicine practitioners here in the United States don't realize is the precarious situation that our profession's in right now. We don't have enough practitioners to sustain this profession. The reason you would see that in certain states early in the year, the ASA that's the National Association of Acupuncture Societies. So it's all the states. In DC, I met representatives from some small states. They have so few practitioners there, and guess what? In those states, the podiatrists, the MDs, the PTs, they're encroaching on their profession by pushing for legislation that allows them to do acupuncture. And the ASA, as a national organization, is trying to help defend those grounds with just, obviously, nationally, we have more members and more money to help with this. But, a lot of people don't realize is that if we don't have more practitioners, more members, more cohesion, our profession is going to be gone.
Having a thriving, profitable practice is one of the most healing things you can do as a healthcare practitioner. Because a robust business is the ultimate expression of vital qi. And that's the heart of our medicine. I'm Julie Bairdontlock, and I help practitioners grow nourishing, profitable, authentic businesses that embody the generative cycle of Chinese medicine. This isn't about all yang all the time. It's about expanding your own internal capacity, growing collaborative relationships with your patients for ethical patient retention, and marketing as an extension of this medicine, not a necessary evil. You already know that everything is connected in your patients' lives and bodies. The same is true for your business. When we align your systems, your schedule, your pricing, and your offerings with you, we create flow, which means more spaciousness, more impact, and more joy. When you are in the flow, fully resourced in terms of chi, time, and money, your business becomes a source of healing, not just for your patients, but for you. Let's grow something rooted, radiant, and real. Visit lifeflowconsulting.com to learn more.
I worry about that. Look, I live in one of those states. I live in the state of Missouri. There are fewer acupuncturists in the state of Missouri than there used to be in my zip code and adjoining zip code in Seattle.
It's crazy.
Yeah, no, it's wild. And yes, chiropractors, I mean, most people, when they get acupuncture in the state of Missouri, they're getting it from a chiropractor, right? Because they, with 100 hours of training, they can call themselves an acupuncturist. I see this as such it is a weighty, right? It is a crisis and opportunity. On one hand, I'm thrilled that acupuncture, because I think acupuncture is just the coolest damn stuff around. I was so curious about it years ago, and I'm more curious about it now. It's the coolest stuff, right? And when I see it being picked up and used successfully by other professions, there's a part of me that's like, hey, wait a minute, dude, that's not yours. But there's another part of me that goes, man, I just love seeing how this stuff is picked up and used all over the place. It helps people. I would really like if it was us acupuncturists that were mostly doing that. But it's clear these kind of treatments are effective and they're helpful, and they will spread through the culture and they will spread through other kinds of practitioners because it's helpful, it's useful, it's safe, and it's effective.
Well, there's definitely argument to be made on that side of it, for sure.
Well, I mean, depending on your training, but I mean, if you're trained well. So I'd love to get your take, your ideas of how we might navigate this crisis.
I don't have answers.
And look, not having answers is fine. In that case, what are your big questions?
One of the big questions, I think the big question is, how do we get more practitioners, quality practitioners into the profession, I suppose? And one of the biggest crises we have right now is a lot of the academic institutions are closing down. They're not economically viable.
And they're already not inexpensive.
Exactly. A lot of the traditional, could we call them blue ribbon schools like ACTCM?
Sure, why not?
Closed down.
Yeah.
They're one of the oldest.
Yes. August institutions.
So many. And then there's a lot of these for-profit institutions now, and they're not necessarily giving us the best education in our profession because they don't pay people very well. They run it like a lean, mean business. They don't pay their instructors very well, so you're not getting quality people. And that's really concerning me.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned this earlier about the difference between someone in the profession who wants to keep like an herb store going. And so you help cultivate the profession because that helps cultivate your store. You got skin in the game. If you have just a business person coming in and selling herbs, that's a different flavor of business.
Absolutely. You don't have the burden of keeping the profession going.
And privilege. Burden and privilege.
And privilege. Yes. And I feel the same way with schools. Because a lot of these for-profit institutions, you know what? If it's not Chinese medicine, it's nursing. If it's not nursing, they move on, for these academic institutions. They answer to investors. And I think that it's a problem. I don't know how we're going to solve these problems. The joke is always, well, if someone just hit the mega Powerball, then we can start a school and start a series of schools and have as a nonprofit, as I think it should be. I don't know. I don't have answers. I don't have answers to that. But we all do our best. I tell my colleagues right now, I teach at my school. I said, listen, it may not pay very well, but it's okay. You volunteer. Not volunteer, well, it almost seems like volunteer right now. At the rates they pay people. And you do it. You do a clinic.
It's your community service.
Exactly. That's the way you see it. Because they have to take a pay cut in order to be clinic supervisor. Now, I teach, but I'm not doing it for the money. Most of us are not, because the math doesn't work out if it were. But I do it because it's for the long-term viability of the profession. Selfishly, also promoting our own business. I just want to, be honest about that as well. But all those interests align.
Those interests do align. This is something. It's taken me a long time to sort of work this out in my head because often I have looked at like the cutthroat competition of the competitive world, and there is that. That's one piece, but there's also this element of cooperation that has to run through anything for a system to work.
Absolutely. Well, what's also another thing that people do not know? I don't really talk about it too much, maybe a little bit more in the last few years. A lot of people think that we, the vendors, like the big vendors in Chinese medicine, that we're all fierce competitors, and we are, but we all cooperate behind the scene. I'm very good friends with Yvonne Lau from Mayway. I know Wilson, also a Lau from New Herbs. I don't know. There's a Lau thing. I don't know. We do a lot of business, like not just them, a lot. Blue Lights also in Ithaca, New York. Behind the scenes, OMS, I'm probably one of their biggest customers. We do businesses all the time behind the scenes. No one knows, and we're all friendly. So when we see each other in trade shows, we all say hello. And here's the thing I would tell people: if we don't all cooperate, my business would not be as successful, and neither would theirs. It's, yes, we do compete within the same space, but there's a lot of cooperation behind the scenes that people don't know about. But they're all good people, and they all want to do the right thing. I appreciate that,
It's great being in a trade, being in a business where we can respect our competitors.
True, yes. And I think what surprises people also is like they don't know that we actually do cooperate behind the scene. We do a lot of businesses with each other. I'll tell you right now, our business would not be as successful as we are without these people. So we need them. I guess that's the bottom line. Just like we all need each other.
I think about like newer practitioners that are trying to get a foothold with a practice and a business so that they can have their practice. And I think it's really easy to look at everybody else out there and go, oh, I've got all this competition. What am I going to do? I'm a little fish. It's a big ocean. For people like this, and you can kind of grasp where they might be coming from, especially when you're first starting out. Any perspective that you might share with them to grasp a footing and recognize that greater sense of cooperation within the ecosystem?
I think that is just not knowing the landscape. We have so few practitioners in the United States. I get invited to teach a class in practice management. Now, they invite me because I have that perspective, because I work with many accounts, right? I'm all across the country, successful practitioners. So I have that perspective. Like I know exactly how much they order and how much they make and all that other stuff, and how many customers they have. And what you realize is that we meet a lot more practitioners. There is no that competition that these people think it's all in their head. In New York City, greater tri-state area, there's like maybe, 15 million people. And how many of us? Not that many. There's plenty of people. You're not competing with each other. There's so many customers. There's so many patients. So to think that, oh, I'm competing with and they don't share things is really silly. It really is. And so at work in Camwell, what I try to do is be a community hub. And we actually have events to get all the practitioners to come together. Last year, we had a job networking fair at our business, and people come in. And I think that, and one of the things that we always try to preach is like, hey, there's plenty of patients out there. We can all cooperate. We don't need to be in competition with each other. We can share best practices. It's not a bad thing. It's a good thing. I understand that mindset. It really is silly, Michael, if we actually know the actual landscape out there, Now, there are going to be exceptions, right? Like I always joke, everyone wants to be in Boulder. And then they realize that there are more practitioners than people. Yes, there are.
Right. There are saturated markets.
Right. But in the big cities, Northern Virginia, New York, LA, I mean, they're just saying.
Yeah. I remember in Seattle, we'd often talk about the fierce competition. But the other thing about Seattle is because so many people use acupuncture is not a weird thing, and almost everybody has one, and lots of people are open to it. Like the more people that use it, the bigger the market is for it. You get a kind of network effect when that happens.
Yeah, and you want to get those people who are not. There's plenty of people who are not familiar with Chinese medicine than those who are familiar with Chinese medicine.
And the ones that are familiar, they might need a new practitioner. And I say this on the podcast all the time. I'm just kind of a booster for the state of Missouri, I guess. The Chamber of Commerce should put me on the payroll. But we really could use practitioners in cities like St. Louis or Springfield or Kansas City, They're not bad cities. It's not New York, right? It's not Chicago. But if you want to help a community and you want to make a good living and you want to live in a place where there's not a big cost of living, man, we really need more practitioners in so many different places.
You're going to get a call from the Chamber of Commerce soon.
I will welcome that call. Wow. I really appreciate your perspective, Thomas. It's invigorating and helpful to think about the opportunities that we have, especially in a moment when, as you pointed out, there's some real troubles that we're also facing.
It's real. We've when I was at Pacific Symposium in November, there was a big meeting about how to identify the problems within our profession and solutions were few, but identifying the problems but that's a start, I suppose, just being conscious of it. Some people just live in la la land and they don't even know. There's a lot of practitioners, they practice in their own silo and not know what's happening. I'm going to do my public service announcement.
Do your public service announcement.
Join your state organizations. There are so many people who don't. They don't want to pay for the dues. And they say, you know what is my state organizations doing for me? I get this all the time. And I tell them, it's because you're not paying attention or you don't care to know. The state organization, the reason that you think that they may not be doing anything is because you're just not aware. And a lot of acupuncturists just are not.
I'm 100% with you. And here's another good reason to pay your state organization. You are paying them to pay attention to the things that you don't want to pay attention to. I'm one of these silo people. I like having my little practice in my nice, quiet neighborhood and having the life that it gives me. It's great. It's wonderful. I don't like paying attention to all the big political things out there. I'm not geared for that, right? Not my ballywhack. But I recognize the value. I recognize the deep importance of it. And I'm happy to contribute to my organization because they're paying attention to the things that I don't want to. But somebody needs to.
Absolutely. And if you look at the people who are running these state organizations, they're not getting paid. These are volunteer people who take out their own time because they're conscious of the problems out there and someone needs to be the sentry. I don't know what's the word for it.
Sentry is a really good word. We were talking earlier about scope of practice issues, right? Acupuncture is a beautiful, wonderful, effective method. Other allied professions will pick it up if they can. And your state organization is your sentry, your first defense that, hey, we got a bill coming through that's going to let nurse practitioners do acupuncture. Oh, we need to get on that.
Absolutely. So that's my public service announcement for everyone. When you contribute to your state organization, you're helping yourself. In the long run, you're helping yourself. So if you're making a good living in doing acupuncture and you want to keep it going, you have to do that. It's a small price to pay. It's the price of the annual dues. Is like going out to have a nice dinner. That's all it is. It's not the end of the world. You need to see the value in it. Open your eyes.
100%. You are preaching to the choir over here. I just got one more thing I want to ask you about, and I'll let you get on with your day. I really appreciate your time. It's fun to sit down and chew the fat on this stuff.
Oh, fun for me too.
And so cool too. Life is so funny. Like, I can't wait to get out of this damn herb store. I want to get out of this business, man. I want nothing to do with this, right? And then the universe is like, watch this. Hold my beer.
Exactly.
So, like I said, I grew up in a family that the people didn't have jobs. We had businesses. And it took me a long time to realize that there's some benefit in that. I feel like I got lucky because, like, in my blood, this idea of having a business is not a strange or foreign thing to me. For the folks that are starting out, right, and you teach business classes, right, for the folks starting out who maybe didn't have the good fortune that I had or you had to grow up under the influence of, a business is a kind of living, breathing thing and a perspective, a way of looking at the world and interacting with the world. If you didn't grow up with that, and now you're a new practitioner and you're thinking, oh, this is terrible, man. I just want to be a practitioner. I don't like this business stuff. I don't want to do it. I think it's a burden. Is there another way to think about that side of our livelihood, that business piece, in the same soft way that you think about your practice with your patients. Like, I think I'm just looking for some perspective here for folks that didn't grow up with the useful influence we had. Like, how can they begin to cultivate that? Right? We always talk about cultivation in our trade, right? You got to do self-cultivation. You got to cultivate yourself. I'd like some thoughts on like business as cultivation.
I don't know if I have the ultimate wisdom on this, but my take is that in our schools, we need to, early in the program, let people know that when you graduate, most likely you're going to have to be, it's going to be a private practice that you have to promote and market. That's just how it is. And if that's not for you, then it's not for you. I mean, that's, now if you think about being a physician also, people into private practice, they in a way, they have to market themselves. They do. I drive along the local highways here. I see big billboards saying the best dermatologists, right? Even the hospitals, they all have, it's the norm in our society. And I would say that in our profession, there's even less being strictly a practitioner and working for a clinic. There are some, but not as often and not as much as like in other professions, right? Like being a physician, you can always just work for a hospital and maybe it's for people, but we don't have that luxury here in our profession. So I think that just being aware that this is part of the profession you need to be proficient at, because if you're not, you're going to be miserable. That's what it is.
Have you got any favorite books or people you listen to, podcast maybe? Podcasts are so cool. On marketing or business that kind of turns you on, that you think is useful, that might be useful to other practitioners, especially people starting out?
Honestly, I don't. Just because I think our business, our profession is so niche. I mean, there are, back in the day, I remember when I first started the business, I was reading From Good to Great, those books. Those were very help fake it until you make it and that type of thing. And it was funny, it was like a buddy of mine was like, oh, those books, they turn out a lot of things that they were saying, the companies they're praising, they went out of business or whatever. But that just could be the nature of how businesses are. So maybe it's not a knock on the book.
Well, and in time, everything declines. So there's that.
Exactly. That was a long time ago. No, but I really don't have any that would be relevant. But I think being out and networking with other practitioners is very helpful. Getting a perspective.
Find out what works for them.
Yeah, I think networking and that's something that we try to foster here in our business. We do a lot of meetups and we invite people, experts, to come and talk about their professions and things like that. Sometimes, most of it's clinical, but sometimes we talk about just our profession and you want to hear what other people have to say. I remember one time we invited someone to talk about insurance, the pros and cons of insurance. Don't make up your mind so quickly, So if there's one piece of advice that I have for new practitioners, get out there and see how the profession is from other people's perspective, and then you can make your own judgment. Don't sit at home and make your own judgment with little information. I'll give you one good suggestion.
Okay.
This is a colleague of mine. She went to work an intern at the most successful clinics and see how they run their businesses.
Oh, that's smart.
Yeah. So she did it. Not only that, she did it as a receptionist. She did it as a practitioner in different areas, as a manager, and she learned all these best practices, and now she incorporates it into her own place. That would be good.
Maybe we need a book on best practices for the new practitioner. I've heard you talk about this in this conversation that we've had about best practices, good practices. Been a very important thing.
Yeah. Well, best practices evolve, so maybe book is not the right form for it. Maybe a podcast, Michael.
Yeah, like I need one more thing.
Yeah, one more thing.
One more thing. But yeah, best practices, first principles, I think are really helpful. Like, don't spend more than you make. I mean, there's a place for debt, but by and large, like, just don't spend more than you make. Like, you might want to fancy this or that. Like, that's great to aim at, like, for sure aim at it, but don't put it on your credit card. Like, pay cash for that stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Well, this has been delightful. Next time I'm in the city, I'll swing on by.
Oh, absolutely. I tell everyone, You will find, everyone will find themselves in New York at some point in their life.
Yes.
So whenever you're in New York, swing by. I'll give you a tour.
We'll have a tour, and then we can go out for dim sum.
We'll have a cup of coffee.
All right.
Sounds good.
Thanks, Thomas.
Okay. All right. Take care. Thank you.
What struck me in this conversation with Thomas was how the pressures of modernization didn't erode his family's herbal tradition. They brought it to life in new and unexpected ways. Faced with the shifting landscape of post-NAFTA Chinatown and a decentralizing customer base, Thomas didn't double down on the old ways. Instead, he built something more responsive, more connected, and allowed the business to shapeshift so it would not just survive, but thrive. From custom-built software to bridging East-West pharmacy standards, the business became more vibrant through adaptation. I think we could all take a lesson from this, that changing to adapt, when rooted in values, it doesn't dilute tradition, it strengthens it, and it makes it more enduring. It's worth considering if you're tied to tradition in a way that holds change at arm's length, or open to seeing how the innovations, values, and perspectives of the stream of medicine you practice can be informed by the challenges of this particular moment. If you enjoyed this conversation on herb stores and family traditions, check out episode 316, Growing Up with Herbs with Yvonne Lau. Well, here we are at the end of this episode. If you've listened up to this point, you're either a rabid fan of Qiological or the forward button on your podcast player stopped working. If you are indeed a fan of the podcast, you can help us to bring new episodes to our community of practitioners by supporting us with a membership or a one-time contribution. Details, of course, are on the website. That's it for today, friends. Join us again next Tuesday for another thoughtful episode of Qiological.